My name is Scott Challoner, and you are listening to the Leaders Council podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. As regular listeners of our programme will know very well, part of our mission here at the Leaders Council is to bring you a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership, and to this end, we're joined on today's programme by Claire Dimpfl, the owner and head of Tadpoles Nursery School in West London. Claire, very warm welcome to you, and welcome back, of course, not the first time that you've been on the show.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and just to sort of elaborate a little bit on on what Tadpoles does, just for those listeners that haven't tuned in before and might not be familiar with you. You started the nursery school back in the 70s, didn't you? In the Chelsea area, and you've recently opened, of course, the new premises in Kensington as well. So very exciting times.
We have. It's been quite challenging. It's been opening something just after COVID it's not the ideal time, as it would seem, but so far it's going very well. We've had huge success, luckily, with Chelsea, and over the years I have always wanted to open another setting, but I didn't want to go too far away because I'm known in this area, and so Kensington and Chelsea don't seem too far apart. When you've got little ones and they're trying to deal with traffic, it's much nicer to be able to walk to your school. So the Kensington site seemed an obvious one to us.
Yeah, the placement certainly seemed like an obvious place to kind of bed down and open the new setting. And we've talked an awful lot about sort of some of the features at the area in Chelsea. But is there anything sort of especially different about the Kensington site? Any new exciting developments there?
Well, we hope that the site will be very much the same philosophy. Very much the same philosophy, but slightly different. Obviously, every site is different. We are on a one-level site in Chelsea, and this site has stairs, which is actually not a bad thing for children to learn physically, to be up and down stairs. And we have 4 lovely, lovely classrooms, and we have a garden, a small garden, but we lead out into a communal garden, which we are hoping to develop into our own as a communal garden for the community as well as us, so that we will be doing things like digging flower beds, letting the children grow vegetables, and things like that. And which will be lovely. I mean, it's really going to make a lot of difference to us, and we'd like it to be part of the community as well. Our garden here, where we do lend our building, at the moment we're lending it to, it was used in the summer in Chelsea for Ukrainian refugees. I let them have a building in the garden for their refugee children who were quite much, and apparently the garden helped them immensely to overcome trauma. And so we're hoping to do not as near as we can in Chelsea, in Kensington, as near as we can to what we're doing in Chelsea. But it will be different. It's a different area. Forest School will be somewhere else. We're going to go up to Kensington Gardens. We won't have a site quite so close, but we will replicate quite a lot of the things we have.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's incredible as well to hear that you kind of been doing your part for the Ukrainian refugees as well. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous what's been going on there, of course, this year since the Russian incursion. And just kind of moving back to the garden side of things as well. Just for, again, those that haven't listened to Claire's other episode on the programme last year. Tadpoles does have an award-winning organic garden which is used for the children, and it really champions a focus on sort of all aspects of ecology within children's education. And there's very much a play-based approach of getting children to kind of grow and learn in their own way and going out into the world and sort of replicating that again. That's essentially going to be a continuation of that philosophy, isn't it?
Yes, it is, very much so. And also we've taken over early in the summer, I went with a colleague, and we went to a very wonderful school called Greenside in Shepherd's Bush, and there we went for a sort of conference day. But the focus in that school is all about food. So they focus their curriculum on all aspects of food. So they will cook for the other children in the school, and they will go and buy the food. And we've taking our children down. If we haven't got the food to grow, we will take them down to choose fruit and things in the co-op or in the supermarket or in a market. We're trying to replicate that and same way, because we always feel that school food is sidelined. It's you eat and then you go and do something else. And whereas if we have a focus on that and the growing, it really does help children's development.
It does, doesn't it? I think there's sort of a bit of a skewed perspective, isn't there? We don't sort of think of it as the fuel for us, do we? I mean, and we don't kind of put that sort of sense of importance on it quite enough, especially when we have sort of children of school age. And just moving on from that as well, Claire, you mentioned earlier on when we were talking about the opening of the new site, some of the challenges around doing that sort of in the immediate aftermath of the pandemic. And I think it's worth talking about that, because we're at a point now where in everyday life, in everyday industry, I mean, it's very much sort of business as usual, grappling with, inflationary pressures, the cost of living. I mean, I know that it's anything but business as usual, where it's kind of getting on with the next challenge. And COVID is almost all but been forgotten in some quarters, hasn't it? But I suppose when we're looking at education, and certainly in the early years settings as well, I think some of the consequences of the pandemic are still sort of very much there for all to see, aren't they? Is that something that you've experienced?
Very, very much so. We found that when the school opened up, which was it was after 3 months we opened up again. But we found that children had, in those 3 months, had been difficulty. But the children who started the next September had really never had been socialised, never had had been really with the family all the time. And they were lacking quite a lot of, in some cases it was language, some cases it was physical skills, because there hadn't been a lot of being able to be in other places. And a lot of it was social skills with other children, etc. That was when we made a decision. We used to take children at 2.5. We made a decision to drop the age to just after 2, so that they could start recovering those skills early. Talking to other schools, we all have the same concerns, have had the same concerns. We've also, not funny enough, but we have found that there has been a greater emphasis at the moment on children with needs, with some with not severe, some with quite obvious special needs, and much more, again, talking to colleagues, talking to people in the other education, later education, and also in early education. We're all seeing children who we are identifying with needs. They can be speech and language, occasionally physical. We have found we have a few more children who appear to be on, well, we call it ASD now, but you would know it as the autistic spectrum. And of course, this raises new difficulties for us. But we are all, we just continue training our teachers so we are able to identify and help parents with these situations.
Exactly right. And I think we kind of almost take for granted, don't we, at times, just how difficult it is for young children in their formative years, where they've missed out on that social interaction, that play opportunity with other children, how much it sets them back. And so from your perspective, I mean, you've had to adapt to that by sort of dropping the intake age to try and encourage them back in to recover that lost time. But obviously, in other settings, it isn't always as simple as that, is it? It's quite difficult.
No, it is. And, some settings don't take children till they're over 3. And also some parents, obviously, where we are, we don't have deprivation funding for 2-year-olds, which is where the 2-year-old funding kicks in, because we don't have many children in that category. But we do take the universal 3-year-old funding, and many parents don't wish to send their children, obviously, to nursery till 3 when that funding kicks in, but it does mean that these children might have, after COVID, lost out a bit on learn obvious things like learning to share, learning to deal with our sort of hygiene needs, all those things which previously they came to us and they'd learned to share, they've had socialization. This has happened much later for them now.
It is, absolutely. And of course, whilst all of this is happening, you're having to grapple with some lingering problems around, obviously, funding for the early years sector. That's been a long-standing issue that we've, of course, brought up on the show before.
Yeah.
But as well as that, there's also the cost of living crisis now, isn't there, and rising energy bills for settings such as yours. So it's a very delicate balance at the moment.
It is, and I know that a lot of settings, a few actually around here have closed, but many in other parts of the country have had to close. I think one of the things the government was looking at was making the ratio teacher to child higher for the under threes. So at the moment it's one teacher to every 4 children, and they were hoping to raise it to one teacher to every 5 children. However, we are very not in favour of that. We feel that would be very detrimental to the child. To the individual child. So even if it is raised, we will not be raising it. If it's a choice for us, we will keep it at 1 to 4, because for us it's all about the child, and we wouldn't be doing a service to the child to add another child to the teacher's ratio.
Yeah, I can certainly see where you're coming from there. I mean, the fact that sort of stretching teachers over, sort of providing for more children, could very well be detrimental to the child in terms of the fulfilment of their needs and also their personal development as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it certainly makes perfect sense from my perspective. As well as that, I suppose something that has come out of government this week as well on the cost of living crisis is support that it's going to be providing for sort of households and businesses alike. Of course, the Chancellor has announced today that the national insurance increase is going to be reversed. So I suppose in terms of salaries, there's going to be some savings made there. But as well as that, there's going to be support for businesses as well. And that includes, of course, schools and early years settings to try and obviously foot the bill for these rising energy costs. So I guess
this would be very important to us, very important to us. I mean, that takes up that, and our rent and things take up a huge amount of our finance. And also, we like to pay our teachers, well. I mean, we aren't a day nursery, so their hours are fairly good, and they do get their paid holiday, which, as we are a nursery which doesn't run all year, runs for 15 weeks paid holiday a year. But, they work extremely hard when they work. It can be quite stressful for them. And we need to make sure that they get a proper salary, and not too much of it has to go on national insurance, etc., etc., etc. Because obviously we're not in the situation of paying them what you would in the city or something like that.
That's exactly right, isn't it? And I suppose as well that when it's a delicate balancing act for so many providers in early years, and you've also got that extra cost sort of going out, not just in national insurance, but also in energy bills as well. It would have seen a lot of them going to the wall, wouldn't it? So hopefully this step will preserve a lot of them.
I hope so, because what I think the general public don't realise is actually early years setting is, they say, goodness, there's a quite big fees for all the extras we give. We obviously charge fees, and what they don't understand is we're not like a primary school where we can have one teacher and a teacher's assistant for a certain amount of children. We literally, our ratios have to be so high on the teaching staff. And the costs are very high for early years. To run an early years setting properly, your costs are very high.
It is, exactly, and it's a challenging recruitment environment out there in the early years sector right now, isn't it, as well? So you have to obviously entice talent into the industry by obviously paying those salaries. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And, we have noticed a trend that a lot of, I don't often have new staff. I'm very lucky. I keep my staff, but because of a couple of retirements, I had 3 new staff this year. and they all came from day nurseries where they were saying that the hours were, for what they were paid, the hours were horrific. They had very long hours and very little holiday. It was a sort of 50 weeks with their pay, and plus their paid holiday, but the school ran for 50 weeks a year. And they got disheartened by being in the day nursery world and wished to go into a more of a nursery school part, which is, so we don't say we're part-time, that the job is part-time. It basically is more or less, it is more part-time than working in a day nursery.
Exactly right. And just briefly going back to sort of the support that settings like yourselves and also further up the education ladder in schools can expect, it is essentially a 6-month sort of time frame for the support. It will sort of last from October till April. And yes. I suppose what the government needs to be prepared for is the eventuality that should energy prices, wholesale energy prices, not come down within that period of time, that support is quite likely going to have to be extended beyond the start of spring, isn't it?
I would hope so. Obviously, our energy costs are less in the spring and summer, but we do have to keep the building. I mean, actually, for children, we sometimes I do. Which is a bit controversial. The buildings are kept too warm for small children, and they do need, one thing the governor's advised, and I agree, they do need an open window, and they do need a lot of outside play. But it is difficult for teachers to work in a situation where a room is chilly as well. I guess the government thought is come April, the weather will be warmer and the support might not be needed so much, but we still will need that support, I think.
Exactly right. It's essentially making sure that the cliff edge is essentially done away with rather than being delayed, because children's learning is inevitably going to suffer when obviously funds that are meant for teachers and meant for their learning, equipment and play and all of the resources that requires is essentially diverted to keeping the building warm.
Exactly. It's it isn't really the best way to spend one's money for helping these children.
It isn't, exactly right. And so just before we wrap up on the programme today, Claire, just because I'm conscious that we're starting to run short of time, I know it's a very uncertain situation at the moment, but if we could maybe look ahead, perhaps sort of 12 months from now, where ideally do you sort of hope that Tadpoles is at that point in time, given the severity of this situation that we're in?
I would hope that Chelsea, technically our books are full in Chelsea for the next 12, 18 months. So from that point of view, I hope that remains. The parents can afford our fees, can afford to go on sending them to us and taking advantage of all the things we have to offer. We would like, ideally, obviously we haven't, to fill Kensington with the same sort of level of expertise and the parents enjoying it as much as they enjoy Chelsea. And I just hope that will happen. The cost of living and everything else that's going on won't deter parents or make them feel that they need to cut back on early years, because I personally feel it's a very, very important part of a child's life.
It is, and it perhaps sometimes doesn't get the sort of respect and emphasis that it deserves, does it? So hopefully over this period of time we start to see the sector also being that little bit more valued. We
hope so. We hope that, that it will be flagged up as one of the most important parts of a child's life. 0 to 5 is when they learn more than they're ever going to learn again, in terms of, as Montessori called it, the absorbent mind. All the things they learn at that period and the way their brain is being formed. It's an incredibly important period in their life.
It absolutely is. And for anybody, of course, tuning into this particular podcast today, who wants to find out a little bit more about Claire's work and about Tadpoles, tadpolesnursery.com, I believe, is your website, Claire, and that includes includes some information on both sites as well, including the new one in Kensington, yes.
And we do have a Tadpoles Instagram account where we put lots of lovely work from the children. And in COVID, we read stories, bedtime stories, so that other children could take advantage of those as well as our own cohort of parents and children.
Yeah, fantastic. And sometimes just a little look at a piece of artwork from a child at a difficult time where things aren't always the easiest emotionally, it can go a long way, can't it? It can have quite a profound impact.
Absolutely. We found it that parents were hugely grateful for what we did at that time.
Absolutely incredible work that you've been doing, and for anybody as
thank you, Scott.
Yeah, for anyone as well, of course, tuning into this podcast who is particularly impassioned by the issues that we have discussed today, and maybe you are an early years provider yourself, you can of course leave a comment with us at Leaders Council, all one word, .co.uk/contact-us, or you can even apply to be on the programme yourself and share your perspective with us via leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply, and it could be you, of course, appearing next to me on the programme next time around. And do feel free, of course, to apply to be on the show also if you head your own business or organisation in any sector and there is a topical matter or issue that you do wish to bring to the discussion table. For now, it has been an immense pleasure welcoming Claire Dimpfl from Tadpoles Nursery onto today's programme. Pleasure as always, Claire, having you with us, and would be good to catch up again in future once obviously hopefully this situation has subsided somewhat.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you as well.
It's been fantastic, Claire, as always. And to everybody tuning into this podcast, I do thoroughly hope that you've enjoyed the interview with Claire today. I have been your host, Scott Challoner, on the Leaders Council podcast as usual. And until next time, all please take care and goodbye and enjoy your weekends.